Hey everybody, how's it going? In this video, we're going to be talking about functions. Now, functions is a huge part of programming in general, and not just Python. And the idea behind functions is basically that you have a block of code that you use all the time, and you want to make it reusable somehow so you don't have to copy and paste your previous logic and change things in it, right? So it can adjust for the new one. So instead, we built something called a function. But before we start defining our own functions, let's have examples of functions that we've been using thus far. The print function is an example of a logic that we do repeatedly over and over again. Now, behind the scenes, behind the curtains, the print function has its own logic. You don't just write print and things pop up to the console. There are things that happen in the background that facilitate this happening. So when you write print Mora codes, something in the background happens that leads it to show Mora codes here. When you take input, that is a function. There's also logic behind this happening, and so on. So let's have an example of a type of code that we would like to repeat or reuse more than once. So let's say, for example, that we have two variables. A is equal to 5 and B is equal to 10. So we would like to add these two numbers and print them onto the screen. So A plus B and 15 is printed out to the screen. Let's say we want to do that again. X is equal to 100 or 1000 and Y is equal to 2000. Okay, we want to add this together and print it onto the screen. You see how this is becoming repetitive, right? What if there is a way that we can simply do this only once and write one line of code that can do all of that for us? Well, apparently there is a way. It's called functions. So let's start by defining our own function. The syntax for defining our own function is as follows. DEF, which stands for define, and then you write the name of the function, the thing that you want to do. So let's make it something descriptive, like add two numbers, okay? And then you pass in how many arguments that you want. And the arguments are basically the things that you want to use in order to produce the result that you want. And they're called parameters, right? So let's say number 1 and number 2. And the reason for that is because you want to add two numbers, A and B, X and Y. So there is this number 1 and number 2. You can name it anything you want, something extremely general. So, and then you put the colon like you do with the for and the if and the while to signify that there is a block of code that is encapsulated within that. Okay, and then what you want to do is add number 1 plus number 2, correct? And then whatever happens, you want to print it out to the screen. So now we've defined a function that adds two numbers together, any two numbers. So let's use that. Okay, so let's take this right here and pass two numbers to it. So number 1 will take on the value A, and number 2 will take on the value B. Now, let me just remove this so it doesn't clutter the screen. Now let's run this. We find that the number 15 appears on the side. And why is that? Because these two values, A and B, have been passed on as parameters. I want you to recognize the lingo now, as parameters. And they took the number 1 variable and the number 2 variable took on the forms of A and B, and therefore they have the values 5 and 10. And then they were used here to generate a result. And that is the idea of functions. Now, there's another bit of programming lingo that you need to know. This bit right here is called a function signature. And what a function signature does is basically describes the function that you have and makes it unique. So if you have any other function that is present, this would make sure that this function is in fact unique. So we can use that same logic once again, but on x and y. So you'll find here that the value 15 and 3000 appeared on the right side of the screen. And this is your introduction to functions.